We are gonna get you to the Bahamas. In this video, we're gonna provide you guys with routes to get to the Bahamas, whether you're leaving from Florida or leaving from anywhere along the east coast of the US. The most common time to cross to the Bahamas is in November, because that's when hurricane season has ended and the weather has calmed down.
Yeah, so at that point you'll see that the weather gets more stable and you get some very predictable and consistent high pressures out in the middle of the ocean, which give you really consistent winds that you can sail by. For the first part of this video, we're going to talk about leaving from Florida to the Bahamas. Now, you can get to Florida anyway. If you're already in Florida, excellent. If you're not in Florida yet, you can get there via the ICW. It's a very protected waterway, and you don't have to deal with storms or anything like that, and you can travel the entire East Coast that way.
Florida is a fantastic jumping off point to the Bahamas because it's going to be your closest point of land to the Bahamas and your straightest passage.
Florida is only 50 miles away from Bimini and West End and all the other island points that you come in and check in at. So it's 50 miles. That's half a day's sail. It's not that far.
When you're looking to cross to the Bahamas, there are 3 factors that you have to take into consideration: air pressure, wind speed, and wind direction.
Air pressure is really important because the air pressure is going to create the systems that are going to be controlling the wind speed and wind direction that you're going to be experiencing on the ocean. So if there's a lot of stuff changing and happening and it's really gnarly out there, it's going to be pretty hectic trying to cross that little 50-mile gap. So in November, once the weather gets more stable and there's the high pressure system set up and the winds are more consistent, you can have a beautiful, consistent sail.
Wind direction's really important because you've got that Gulf Stream to contend with. The Gulf Stream always runs from south to north, so any northern component of wind is going to make your trip really rough.
Yeah, so you're going to get wind over current, and the Gulf Stream is notorious for just being absolutely horrendous. And that's only if you go on the wrong days. If you go on the right days, it's going to be great. Wind speed is important because you need the wind to give you the power to get across the Gulf Stream. Otherwise, you have no fuel for your sails. So you don't want to go on a day that's dead calm because then you have no wind. You're not going to sail anything.
Unless you're in a powerboat.
Yeah, then you want to go when there's no wind. And then there you go.
We're biased. We're talking about sailing because that's what we're doing. But if you're in a powerboat and you're trying to cross the Gulf Stream, you want to go on a day that is totally calm. So let's look at some examples on our chart now of weather that is either good or bad to cross.
So we're going to zoom in on a weather app and we're going to look at the screen and show you just a sample of days. And would we cross on that day? Why and why not?
So here's the first day. Would we cross here? No, because there's not enough wind. On the second day, it's another big no, because the wind is from the north. The third day is another no, because the wind is also from the north. And then the fourth day is a no, because the wind is going to be on your nose. The fifth day is another no, because the wind's still on the nose. But then on the 6th day, we have a big old yes. This is your weather window to cross.
Yeah, you have excellent wind speed and wind direction. The wind is blowing out of the south, so that means you're going to be on a beam reach going across. So it's just really, really easy to remember. When you sail from Florida to the Bahamas, you have to be on starboard tack. If you're not on starboard tack, turn around and pull back into Florida because it's going to be really nasty when you get into the Gulf Stream.
Okay, so you found your weather window. Now, how do you cross the Gulf Stream? A lot of people get really daunted by the Gulf Stream. The Gulf Stream. It's not that hard.
Yeah, I actually was really freaked out the first time we crossed it. I read books that are solely written on how to cross the Gulf Stream. They make it seem like a huge deal, but it's a current. It's just another current. It just happens to be out in the ocean.
And it's a very predictable current. So as long as the wind is flowing in the same direction as the current, you're going to be fine. What you need to do is simply point that bow due east.
Now, you want to correct for magnetic variance in your area and just follow your compass. Don't worry about your heading over ground. Just point your bow due east and just go across as quickly as you can. You're going to be carried north. That's fine. Don't worry about it because once you get to the other side and you're onto the Bahamas banks, you leave the Gulf Stream, and then you no longer have that horrible current. Then you can do your nice Bahamian sail to a port where you check in, and then carry on from there. So it's really, really simple.
It's much easier to head south after crossing the Gulf Stream than it is to try to beat against the Gulf Stream to not get that northern component that you're going to get. The good news is it's only 50 miles, like we said, and so you're going to cross it really fast and be through it before you know it.
A lot of people talk about crabbing across, where you point your bow a little bit south to compensate, and that way you have a straight due east heading all the way across. The problem is you're just spending more time in the Gulf Stream, and if a storm or a squall kicks up, you're in it. So the longer you're in there, the more risk you have of being in that situation.
Get in and get out. So that's how you get to the Bahamas if you're specifically leaving from Florida. Now we're going to talk about routes that you can take if you're not leaving from Florida.
A really nifty part of this is the fact that the U.S. is curved in its shape, and so is the Earth. So the distance from Bermuda to pretty much anywhere on the East Coast is about 700 miles. It's going to be a little less in some areas and a little more in other areas, but it's roughly 700 miles to get to Bermuda. So with that in mind, you're going to head to Bermuda, and then when you get close to Bermuda, you can stop there if you want. It's a gorgeous country, and it's about $35 per person when we checked in there. And then from there, you can either stop there or keep going, and then you head south and then come into the Bahamas on their eastern side. And the reason is the prevailing winds.
How are you going to know about these prevailing winds? You're going to arm yourself with some pilot charts. And in the description of this video, we've provided you with a link so that you can download your own pilot charts. But we also recommend getting the paper versions.
So what you want to do when you're looking at your pilot chart is you want to focus on the wind roses. Now these are very different from wind barbs that you see on normal meteorological maps. But these show you the most common wind direction and force in Beaufort scale, or the little barbs. So what you want to do is find the route that's got the biggest arrows in one direction, because that means that the wind blows that direction the most time in that month. So find your November chart, look at it, and find the route that has the most predictable winds, and follow the downwind most predictable winds. No reason trying to beat here. And you'll just follow the downwind way, which if you look, now that you know the idea of go to Bermuda and then head south and then pull into the Bahamas, you see why. The wind barbs show that that is the prevailing wind direction in those areas on your way down there.
So you'll find that approaching the Bahamas, the winds are from the east. So you want to get to the east of the Bahamas.
Yeah, because then you're coming in on a nice downwind run.
Why don't you just flank the East Coast and then head over to the Bahamas?
Well, the distance is almost the same. Flanking the East Coast, you're going to sail about 1,100 nautical miles.
Whereas if you go the Bermuda route, it's going to be 1,400 miles. But the Bermuda route's got you going downwind the entire way. So those 1,400 miles are going to be easy breezy beautiful. Whereas if you go those 1,100 miles down the East Coast, you will be beating against the wind for 1,100 miles, which just sounds awful.
The other huge thing, when you're out in the ocean, you have ocean weather, which is consistent and predictable. You'll have constant winds in the same direction. When you're flanking the coast, you're going to have coastal weather. So that's the worst. That's what you don't want to have to deal with. So that's a huge difference. So you're looking at 1,100 miles being close to shore where you could run aground, which is a horrible thing, versus 1,400 miles, which will take about 2 weeks of beautiful ocean sailing.
So once you get to the Bahamas, where do you go in? Well, the first thing you need to do is check in.
Now, you can check in at Staniel Key when you get there.
Mm-hmm.
Now, all right, our favorite place was Staniel Key. They have 2 grocery stores, gorgeous snorkeling, and a really, really nice beach, and a great cruisers community.
So where do you come in to get to Staniel Key? You go into Conch Cut.
So coming in through Conch Cut is really easy for the area. The Exumas are just a bunch of barrier islands, and the eastern side is really deep and really rough, and then the western side is just paradise. So you got to get through that barrier island pass, and the easiest way is through Conch Cut. It's really wide, really deep, and just a little bit north of Staniel Key. So you pop in through there, and then head south, and then pull into your anchorage.
And you've made it. You're in the beautiful paradise that is the Bahamas. Enjoy yourself, go snorkeling in the crystal clear water, and drink it all in.
Yep. But don't forget to check in, and you can check in Stanley Key, which is right there. Because otherwise you'll get busted, and they do find the boats. So, just a warning.
So let us know in the comments if you found this helpful in your navigation process to the Bahamas. And also, let us know if you have any other destinations that you would like some help navigating to, and we will be there for you. Thanks for watching this episode of Sailing Wisdom. Don't forget to like the video, share it with your friends, and hit subscribe so you don't miss the next Rigging Doctor episode. And if you're interested in even more Rigging Doctor awesomeness, consider becoming a patron to see all of our extras. Can't wait to see you next time as you join us out here on the high seas.